So really quickly, Dronebase, I'll talk more generally about what is the state of this technology, what's the state of this industry, and just kind of an open question, like what is a drone pilot? Is that a job or a profession? Is that something that is needed or not needed? So just very quickly, who am I and who are we? Again, my name's Dan. I was an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. And during my time in the service, I was not a drone pilot, but watched this technology go from kind of a mainframe computer, like a Global Hawk, took about 50 people to fly, even though no one was on it. Took off from a runway, landed on a runway. The Predator Reaper was kind of the next iteration, about as big as a truck. Still took off from a runway, landed from a runway with a remote pilot. The systems got smaller, where I could give this kind of an educated staff NCO, and they could take off from a little platform and land on our small base. And then it got down to the point where an uneducated infantry person could just throw a system, get it up in the air, and you get a live video downlink to exactly what it saw. So not quite from the mainframe computer to the iPhone, but from about the mainframe to the laptop. Really quickly, on our company, I think I'm having trouble here. Just trying to push. Oh, thanks. So just very quickly on our company, Dronebase, with our company, enterprise customers just push a button on the internet, send us a list of work sites, properties, addresses, and anywhere in the United States, we can return them drone video, imagery, or data in under a week, generally in the low hundreds of dollars. So we're working with big real estate enterprises like a Hilton. We have a partnership with Keller Williams in the residential sector. Also working with big national, international construction companies, big national, international insurance companies. And again, as I think we were talking about in the last chat, there's just pay as you go. So companies and enterprises make no fixed cost investment. They have no equipment costs. They don't have to train or hire anybody to fly a drone. They don't have to worry about risk, liability, et cetera. So just a kind of a service provider model. And just kind of what are some applications of this? Again, in real estate, enterprises ticking through different various types of properties you might see. Generally, you can also think of an inspection of hard assets in infrastructure or environmental surveys. On construction sites, you can build both, you can do a time lapse, give a visual project update along the exact same flight path month on month. And then getting more into the kind of data services. In these cases, you're building a georeference map. From that, you can infer a digital service model, have a georeference orthomosaic map, and build 3D models, do volumetric calculations. And so we do all of our operations by having built a pilot community of folks kind of all over the US and all over the world. We've operated in over 25 countries. And so I guess I wanted to pose this question. I'll try to take more questions than talk today. But, I guess our question we always think about is being a drone pilot a profession? And what is that like as a job? If I just fast forward 2 or 3 years ago, this was just a totally homebrew space. We were all making our own drone systems, just soldering them together, wiring them together. Some amount of making kits, other times it'd be 3D printing systems and making them ourselves. As you all know, with that fragmented hardware market, variability was a huge problem. So if I didn't solder the third wire into the fourth plate, the system would flip upside down and crash on a construction site, which occasionally happened. So as systems have gotten more and more standardized, that's been actually a benefit to kind of where we are today. But so as you can imagine, a totally homebrew kind of community, there was essentially no one making money on this because it was just brand new. Maybe about a year or two ago, you started to see kind of people doing this part-time. Around a year ago, more people doing it full-time. And now you kind of see folks doing this kind of roughly as a profession, as their job. Again, what does this kind of work like? It's fairly dull, dirty, dangerous work. I probably did the first 100 jobs that we did as a company, and that was kind of going out to a mine in the Mojave Desert to do a scan of their stockpiles to tell them, here is the volume of ore you have, and here's the kind of dollar inventory value that ore would give you. Or going to a big construction site in Orange County and helping them build an aerial survey of what that site was, or just simply kind of going to a commercial office park in Los Angeles and then helping them get in marketing videos or images for their project. So maybe just kind of going through a little bit of this. Again, like what might a kind of a professional have? Like a year ago, I probably would have thought there'd be something like an enterprise class drone, or there'd be a lot of different types. But just kind of like you probably use your iPhone as your enterprise phone and a MacBook as your enterprise laptop. It turns out that these quote unquote consumer systems are actually very capable of tackling enterprise use cases when armed with the right software, with the right operator and hardware. So generally speaking, for kind of the mid to low, for like $2,000, you can basically be fully equipped with a system that can handle the vast majority of really enterprise use cases. And that's really surprising. A year ago, most of us didn't think that. We thought like there's going to be some enterprise system that would cost $5,000 to $10,000 or $20,000, highly specialized operator, take like 3 or 4 people to fly, and that just hasn't proven the case. So that's kind of been a surprise at the upside in the space. From our operators, we're basically mandating they use one of the 2 latest systems. Obsolescence in the space is pretty crazy right now. It's probably about 2 times the phone cycle. So about every 6 months, a new system comes out that's usually less expensive and several times more powerful than the one 6 months ago. That's another reason that big businesses aren't really going to invest in systems, because they just change over so fast. A lot of companies got burned by buying a system, and then just the technology just moves so quickly right now. We also expect people to kind of have like multiple batteries, multiple backups, and just be familiar with kind of how to do the work. And talk a little bit about kind of compliance, insurance, some other things around this space as well. And again, like what does a drone pilot do? I'd say like people are, I'd say like some people are really attracted to the art of it. You get a lot of photographers or people with an eye for kind of taking a photo, and they just love taking photos on the ground. They also love taking them in the air. It's a really interesting, kind of unique perspective. You tend to see these folks more in kind of, capturing an event, doing marketing materials for something like real estate. Then you get folks who are really hardcore into the science. As you can imagine, those folks are more interested in kind of engineering use cases, surveying, heavy industry like mining and oil and gas. The best folks typically came from an industry and are going back to serve that industry with this technology. And the best people have a little bit of each, right? So it's they both can understand the art and the science of what they're doing. I think as we alluded to before, a human and a machine are a very powerful combination. I think that fully 100% automated drone operations is a bit utopian. And you can, and certainly now even you can just go sketch out a quick map and it'll automatically fly a site. You can drop on a template, it'll automatically take all the image and video you need. But I think like totally automated operations are a bit utopian, and completely manual operations are already obsolete. So somewhere in the middle right now, where like a human eye, a human kind of context is really important. So if we're sending someone to like adjust an insurance claim, they can do about half that work in a totally automated push one button and it'll go through a shot list. But then the person on the ground typically will have to go through and kind of assess where the actual change was, where the actual damage happened. And so I'd say today, in general, I'd say the person's still doing about 70% of the work, the machine's doing about 30% of the work, but that's drastically going down, in 6 months it'll be 50-50, 6 more months it'll be, the machine will be doing most of the work, but the human can do increasingly value-added tasks as they fly. And I briefly just talked about enterprise versus kind of consumer drone systems. So again, I wanted to keep this kind of short and take more questions from the audience. So if you guys have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to ask.
Thank you very much. So I find that insight fascinating that there was that people thought there was going to be an enterprise class drone iPhone, and that's essentially what we're directing that iPhone over works a lot more using the iPhone. So we need a good part of that is going to be a consumer product because of the enterprise product. Because the question is, as DJI won that market, can you guys work on DJI hardware?
Yeah, so I mean, again, just like you would not expect one hardware player to be so dominant in a space, but I mean, just the state of play today is that DJI systems are dominant in the space. I mean, I'd say 85 to 90% plus. Once, and you know, not unlike an iPhone, I mean, once you have a system in the hands of millions upon millions of users, and they just have an iterative cycle where you're learning from them, you're manufacturing based on their feedback, and you're just putting out another product every 6 months, that loop gets harder and harder to kind of get into and interrupt. You see some US-based companies that do make their own system, and that allows for a very tightly integrated kind of hardware, software, services package, which can make some sense. I think 3D Robotics had a good lead in the enterprise drone space about 2 years ago. They pivoted into more of a consumer system with the Solo, and that just wasn't adopted that closely by the market. GoPro is, you know, they announced a drone they're going to release called the Karma. We'll see how that goes. And there's a couple other people still making systems, but right now DJI is surprisingly kind of dominant in the hardware market share.
And so you do enterprise drone as a service, but you incentive by the consumer. I think if you saying, you know, those products where you're storing a drone, you know, takes a selfie or follows you as you kind of surf. Is that the real market?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think even, well, I mean, there's a company called Lily just making that dedicated kind of as a feature, the follow me functionality. But if you look at what like a Phantom 4, the most recent DJI system already has that follow me functionality. So if you're using your phone and walking with it, it will follow you already. It doesn't, you know, the sense and avoid still being worked out where it really can navigate around objects. That's not quite there yet. But yeah, those are, I'd say, like more features than something you probably design an entire company around.
Hi, David. You're talking almost like a Moore's Law effect on the iterations going on. Is it the software that's changing rapidly? Is it the hardware? Or is it the understanding of the applications and new features being built in?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And part of why I think this is interesting and exciting is like it is the convergence of 5 or 6 technologies kind of moving in tandem. The only one that's not getting like asymptotically better is the battery. If someone can fix that, like that will be incredible, because every minute you can fly is another acre you can map. So that's the one piece that isn't really getting better. But I'd say, you know, things that are getting better, you know, exponentially, just flight controls and avionics, the stabilization of the gimbal. The cameras, you know, we're sending essentially everybody out with 4K quality video or 12 megapixel or above imagery that's all geo-referenced, all geo-tagged. The software on the systems themselves has gotten dramatically better. And now folks are opening up that software. So like DJI has a SDK that you can now build into. So some of you don't have to start from like absolute zero on an autopilot. It's like a lot of those avionic functions can be called. So it's several things kind of converging at once. I'd say things to look out for are with taking pictures to build maps, photogrammetry is still not good enough to replace like ground survey teams. It can get kind of 2 centimeters accurate if you know what you're doing, you know how to tie into ground control points. With something like LiDAR, if someone can build a good modular LiDAR sensor, that will actually be to the millimeter accurate. And other folks are building modular inputs, like FLIR built a modular camera for the DJI Inspire 1. So then that allows you to do IR, near IR applications. Other folks are going to build like a vegetative sensor for crops. So there will be kind of modular inputs, I think, so you don't have to build an entire system from scratch.
My first question is, do you need a FAA license to become a drone pilot?
Yeah, so I mean, the state of kind of regulations is always fast moving here. Like 2 or 3 years ago, there was no framework to do this at all. Currently, you apply for an exemption you apply for what's called a 333 exemption to the FAA to conduct commercial drone services. That is the current correct way to do that. I think there's about like a 6-month waiting list or so to get through that process. You also can go out to kind of a specialty network of drone insurers who will insure the actual operation of your flights. And you don't have to really insure the systems. You will insure the systems, but that's less important than insuring your operation. I would just say keep an eye out. In this month, in May of 2016, the FAA is supposed to announce what they call like Part 107 to the NPRM, which is a commercial drone operator's license. Under that framework, you'll take a one-time written test, pay like a $200 fee, and then you will have a commercial drone operator's license. You will not need a pilot's license to operate within certain kind of restrictions, but much more permissive and kind of a good forward-leaning policy that is supposed to come out in this month, may be delayed to next month or so, but they seem confident that they're on a good timeline trajectory for that.
I'd like to ask what is your view on drone services? Will it be automatic? As in, like, drone will fly to be automatic, or will it be verified and will come to your place and fly for you?
No, it's also a great question. We definitely think about it a lot. I mean, we're trying to collapse the time from like a request to the time it's delivered. We're doing a lot of stuff like same day. This is not quite like an Uber where you need it in 5 minutes. Honestly, most people need it in kind of a week, sometimes in a day or two if you're trying to assess a claim or you're trying to, something's really a rush. But I think we try to collapse that to as close to real time as we can. There is definitely a nasty kind of last mile problem. Even if someone just needs to set it down and hit a button, they still need to kind of get there. Urban areas, you could potentially have like nodes to just task things out from like a central repository. But in more distributed areas, honestly, you could just have someone in kind of a van or like a service provider just working a whole region fairly efficiently. But no, it's a good question. We think about it a lot.
All right, okay, we'll talk about one last quick one. We can do it in a minute.
So with all the stuff that's moving on, the exponential curves, the stuff you talked about, sensors are getting smaller, they're being cheaper, algos are getting better. It sort of feels like autonomy is inevitable as opposed to evolving. So how do you feel that way?
Well, I think it is inevitable, but I think that just frees the human on the ground to do like increasingly higher value-added tasks, whether you're calling out kind of annotations in a real-time way as the system's flying itself because you don't need to fly, or you're helping that live stream that back for agronomists who actually can kind of hash and make sense of the data that they're seeing real time. I think autonomy is absolutely where we're already in many ways there. So I think it's just what's the highest value-added task the person on the ground can do, kind of concurrently with the operations, how we would think about it. Yeah, I think that's just inevitable. So I agree with you.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.